Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. I'm going to let a few more people join because I know we had quite a few people sign up to attend this training tonight. So I want to give them a chance to get started with us before I start. So when they're all here, we will begin. I'm just going to share my screen with you so that you can see our slides. Take me just 1 second. Okay. All right, can you all see my slides here? All right, wonderful. Just gonna kind of move things around on my screen and get organized. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. If you weren't able to join us for the last one, we'll do a little recap of that when we get started, so you're not going to be left out. And then also we'll be sending out a resource link after the training, so you'll have access to the first week's training of Ledge 101 Part 1 and also the Part 2. So I just want to give this a couple more minutes. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. I know you probably had a long, busy day today. We appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Probably not as busy as our teachers.
I think these are our teachers that are on here with us. I'm just going to change my view so I can see all of you. There we go. All right, I don't want to wait too long because I know you all are busy and you're probably ready to get your next job started, which is at home, probably doing everything that we have to do in the evenings, right? So I will welcome you to ECE Voices, the Educators Advocacy Network, Legislation 101. We are very lucky to have some generous funding from the Practitioners Voice of California to be able to put together these trainings and offer these for you. I want to thank you all again for joining us for these trainings. We're really excited to have you with us and to teach you all about legislation. Next week, we'll be covering Budget 101, so we'd like you to join us for that as well and learn about the whole budget cycle that happens in California. We have some wonderful presenters with us tonight that's going to be presenting with me. We have Ken Herron. He's the CFO and co-owner of Early Childhood Discovery Centers. So hello, Ken. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
We also have Juliet Terry. She's the government relations specialist with Child Care Resource Center, and she was with us last week. So thank you for joining us again, Juliet. And then I am Justina Erpelding. I work for Every Child California as the advocacy organizer and run ECE Voices. So first off, I just want to go over what are some of the things that we're going to be discussing with you tonight. We're going to, like I said at the beginning, recap what we talked about on October 7th. In case you weren't here for it, you'll get a little catch up on it. And then also, if you were here, we're just going to refresh your memory on what we went over and that. We're going to talk about committee structures. It's really important to understand how the committee cycles work when it comes to our policy bills. So we're going to go over that. We'll talk about our ECE bill committees and what that means. We'll talk about bill analysis and why it's so important, and talk about how does a bill go through the hearings. There's actually a first, second, and third hearing. What does it mean to testify at a hearing and what are you supposed to say? We'll cover that. Our legislative cycle in California is a 2-year session. So what does that mean? And what does it mean to be in the first year of that cycle and the second year of that cycle? And then we'll do a little recap and go over how to turn in support letters. So lots of information to share with you tonight. Also, I do want to cover some housekeeping, which there is a Q&A box. That's where you can put questions anytime during this presentation. And Juliet, Ken, or I will answer those questions for you. Whoever is available will either put an answer, type it up in there, or we'll answer it live for everyone. Feel free to use the chat function to talk to each other. And then because I set it up as a meeting so that we can have live questions. So feel free to use your icons and raise your hand if you want to ask a question. This is a really sort of laid back process here. So feel free to jump in at any point to ask any questions for clarification. We want to make sure that you understand this information because it is a lot of information. So first, I'm just going to run through these recaps. Last week, we talked about what is a bill. So a bill is an idea that comes from someone who has decided that their idea, if it became law, would improve their community in the state of California. So they drum up support for that idea, and then ultimately they're going to take it over to the Capitol to talk to a legislator, whether they're the constituent of a representative and they go directly to them, or they already have a relationship with a legislator. They're going to take that idea to them, and if they support it, that legislator will become the author of that idea and turn it into a bill. So a bill is a document that lays out all the legal jargon of what it will become if it passes as a law in California. So the bill is what we're going to be focused on a lot in this training, about how we can support it and get it through the whole cycle it has to go through. So the language of a bill is put together by experts. They're going to draft it into a document and they're going to make that public. They're going to assign it a bill number, and that's how we identify it and track it. So let's go back in time a little bit and have a little bit of fun. We have someone who is a lead advocate who wanted to be here tonight, but she's so busy. Her name's Jennifer Torres, and she really wanted to share with you a Schoolhouse Rock video. So if you're around my age, you're going to remember watching these in elementary school. So this video is about how a bill becomes a law. It's just a few minutes long, and we're going to have a little fun watching this. And then we will go back to our slides. So tell me if you have any issues seeing or hearing it. And then I believe it's going to start with a little commercial first that I will skip, and then we'll watch the video. My computer is running a little slow, but we're going to give it a second to catch up with us. All right, we'll see if this works. It's pausing my screen share, so might need some tech support. Okay, hold on one second. I have it running on mine, but I see it's paused over here. I don't know if it's just slow to catch up.
I would stop your screen share and then maybe share this.
Stop share. Okay, hold on, y'all. We're going to get there in just a second.
That's one before you do it, click.
Okay, can you all see this video? Okay, we're going to start this again.
Memory Lane. Remember Schoolhouse Rock and I'm Just a Bill? Well, having watched the infrastructure bill try to make its way through reconciliations and vote-a-ramas, we decided it was time to revisit I'm Just a Bill.
Woo! You sure sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. But I wonder who that little sad scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. Used to be sort of simple to get a voting committee. Now it's hard to become law today. At least I pray that I will, but today I'm still just a bill.
Well, it's become one wild ride. Bills don't even have to start. Ad hoc gangs of senators can write bills instead. They hammer things out behind closed doors. It's the filibuster they're trying to get around. These days, a supermajority isn't easily found.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. I am now gridlocked in the Senate cause of partisan bluster. But if they can't free me from the filibuster, I ought to pass muster. If 60 senators vote for me, how I pray that they will. But today I'm still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. It sounds like you're not getting any further. The minority's filibuster has you trapped.
Not this time. I'm one of the lucky ones. If we can get past the Senate parliamentarian, they can declare I go to reconciliation. If she rules favorably, I don't die.
Reconciliation? Now what the heck is that?
It's an obscure part of law that gives budgetary bills special powers. They can't get locked up by the filibuster. Thanks to reconciliation, a simple majority gets me out of the Senate. Then I go over to the House and go through a vote-a-rama.
Oh no!
Oh yes!
What the heck is vote-a-rama?
It's how I get to the floor for a vote. A mostly meaningless 20-hour marathon. Make any amendment you want to for all for members of Congress.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and it's hard to get a vote on the Hill. The parliamentary maneuvers will make you feel dizzy, and the sausage making gets mighty frothy and fizzy. But there's a small chance for me still to become a law if they will. Just vote on me because I'm a bill.
So you get passed by the House and sent back to Senate, and then you're done, right?
Oh no! Then I go to conference where the White House joins in. More amendments can be added or subtracted. There's a whole lot of wheeling and dealing, and I find my way back to the Senate for more debate and then another vote. Then they even put me through another vote-a-rama. Then the Senate bill is sent back to the House again, where they have to vote on me again. If I get through all that, and then they vote for me, then I finally get sent over to the White House. I finally make it to the president's desk, where I get signed into law. That is, if I ever make it that far, and only if he doesn't veto me.
It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will, 'cause today I'm still just a bill.
Okay, that was a very dramatic video, but welcome to the life of an advocate. And you can see that that is, oh, hold on, let me close some videos back here. Okay, so as we can see, it is a very complicated process. Hold on one second. I'm having a hard time with my YouTube still running in the background. Okay. Got that closed. Now I'm back with you. It's a very complicated process that we're trying to break it down into very small portions for you all so that you can have a better understanding and not get overwhelmed with how much a bill has to go through. I'm going to share my screen with you again so that you can see our slides here. And share. Go back into presentation mode. All right. So we are going to recap what's next. So we talked about how a bill was an idea that somebody came up with. Anybody can come up with that idea. Now, once we have an author at the Capitol that wants to support that bill, it's read to the chamber. The chamber means all of the assembly members or all of the senators. So a bill will either be a Senate bill or it will be an assembly bill, and it will stay on that side with the assembly until it's made it through its full cycle before it switches over to the other house. So they'll read it to the entire assembly or to the entire Senate members, but they cannot act on it for 30 days after they've read that bill out loud. And then it will go to the Rules Committee. Now, the Rules Committee is a few select senators or assembly members that work to decide where the bill is best placed to be discussed, all the nuances of it and how it will affect California. So for example, if it's a bill that affects K through 12, it's most likely going to be sent to the Education Committee, where people are on that committee that are experts in that area and can discuss it and really see how it would be implemented, working with the systems that we have in place currently, or what would need to be changed. So like I said, the bill will stay either on the Senate side if it was started by the senators, or on the Assembly side if it was started by the assemblies, through the entire first cycle of being heard through hearings before it gets switched over to the other house for that whole process to start over again with them. So next we're going to recap, what do I mean when I talk about committees? Well, the committees exist both in the Senate and the Assembly side. They are senators and assembly members that have been chosen to be part of the standing committees. There are many, many committees within our Assembly and our Senate. And those are the members that have special knowledge on particular issues and special interest in those issues. And they work with other people within California that work in that sector that can give them more detailed information to help them determine if the bill is feasible. So the bills that have a fiscal impact, meaning that there's a price tag that would go along with implementing it, they have to go through a committee called the Appropriations. Now, the examples of standing committees that we use for the ECE world would be Appropriations, because sometimes what we're asking for will have a price tag that's associated with it. Our bills go through Budget. They also go through the Education Committee and the Human Services Committee, because a lot of the bills that we deal with like CDE and CDSS. So next, let's talk about the structure of a committee. So a committee chair is placed in that designation by the Speaker of the Assembly or the Senate. The chair is the person that's in charge of setting the hearing dates for the committees. They can set things like the order in which the bills are heard. They prepare a consent calendar, and we'll talk about what a consent calendar is in a slide coming up. They set limits. So if you've ever been to a committee hearing, they'll say, okay, based on how much time we have, you guys have 1 minute to talk. So they kind of just keep the hearing moving forward to make sure it doesn't stall out. There's also a vice chair. They will preside over the hearing if the chair is ever unable to attend the hearing. And then you have members. And of course, these are all senators or assembly members that are in these positions. So the members, they'll debate a bill, they'll talk about the nuances of it, they're going to discuss every detail of that bill at the hearing, they're going to suggest amendments to the bills, and they're going to allow the public to come to these hearings and hear what they have to say about the bill so that they can understand how it's going to impact you and I and our businesses. And they also will vote on the bill to decide, yes, they do want it to continue going through the bill cycle. They either support it or they don't support it. They can reject bills that are set on consent. And consent just means it's a non-controversial bill. They're not really worried that it's going to have a hard time moving through the cycle. And so they allow it to go onto a consent. And if there's no one on the committee that says, hey, I have a problem with this, they just allow it to be approved and go through. But most bills, when they take a vote on it, it takes a majority vote for it to pass through that committee. Generally, bills are heard in more than just one committee. And so we'll go to the next slide here. So as part of the committee structure, so now you know the assembly members and the senators make up who the chair are, the vice chair, and the members of it and what they do. Well, they also work with other people that aren't assembly members and that aren't senators. They are people that are in our community that have expert advice to give them to help direct them when they're looking over all the details of the bill. So they have their committee staff. And this is who we largely work with as advocates. They gather information from the public and share it with the legislator. So for example, we just had a meet and greet in Gilroy, and we had staffers there, and they made sure that we understood that they were taking down all of our notes of things that we would like to be addressed and bringing it back to the legislator. That's their job. So they're going to review any of the existing rules and regulations and guidelines and policies, and they bring that to the legislator so that they have a full understanding of the impact of the bill while it's going through the committee process. They do have chief consultants. Those people are going to really deeply analyze the bill. They're going to be a supervisor basically over that committee and plan and organize their regular committee hearings. And they really do a lot of advising to the Assembly and the Senate committee members. You have principal consultants, and all of these are listed on the website for these committees. They'll tell you exactly who is in these positions and how to contact them. So the principal consultants are going to be writing up a fiscal analysis, like how is this affecting the amount of money it'll cost in California. They're going to be tracking that legislation and communicate with everyone, all the members and the staff and government agencies and the advocates, to make sure that they have a full picture of what people need and what it looks like moving forward. And then the committees have a secretary as well. They take the amendments, track the bill, they prep for hearing, they maintain their files. So keep everything organized for them. So now I'd like to take a deeper look at each one of the committees that we would use as advocates if there's a bill that we're bringing forth and it's been already told to the floor, if the 30 days is up and the Rules Committee has now, let's say, sent it to, let's start with appropriations, although they don't start with appropriations, we're going to start there. Appropriations, their goal is to make sure that that policy is fiscally responsible. So they're going to make sure that it's not using up too much money or something that they can't continue to fund year after year. Bills can be heard up to 3 times in a committee hearing. And then after the bill is heard, they're going to prepare a bill analysis afterwards, which is going to be a breakdown of the bill, any similar bills, who's supporting it. And we're going to go into this, Juliet's going to go into this in detail in just a few minutes. But the bill analysis is incredibly important. We just had a meeting, like I said, with legislators. Senator Cortese was there, and he was saying that one of the most important things that he does is pull the analysis. He goes right to the last page where it says who are the positions of support on there. And if it's his constituent and he's not sure how to vote on it, he supports the bill because his constituents need it. So the bill analysis is super important. And that has to be available within 24 hours of the hearing. One of the most important parts is that it brings up any sort of questions that the committee might have about it. So when you go to a hearing in appropriations, the testimony is a little bit different. When you go to like an education committee hearing or a human services committee hearing, you really want to talk about how is it affecting your job? How will that bill make it better? When you're talking to appropriations, they really just care about the fiscal effect it's going to have on California. And so they don't want to hear all the extra stuff. They just want to talk about money. And the Department of Finance is always there at their hearings at the witness table to give their take on it. So any bill that's going to have $150,000 or more impact on California is going to need a majority of the members present and voting to move it. And it'll go directly to the suspense file. It can be confusing when you hear that a bill went to the suspense file. A lot of times people think, well, it's a dead bill. It's not. If it's in appropriations, what it means is that this committee is waiting for the governor to release the budget, so they know how much money is included in the budget before they make any sort of decisions on how much money they're going to spend on policy bills. That's really what it comes down to. All right, so a committee that we often use is education. What's nice is that the education committee for both the Senate and the Assembly have regular meeting dates. So you can see on this slide, I have written that the Assembly meets every Wednesday at 9 a.m. in the same room. That doesn't mean that there can't be changes through the legislative process. Often they remove bills that you think are going to be on there, or they add bills, or maybe their hearing time got moved back, and they're waiting for like their daily session to end before they can start this. So it's really important to bookmark those 2 pages and be able to look to see if there's any changes in the hearing times. But it is nice to know that those days are when they generally have their hearings, because it does also affect when you send in your support letters for bills. They need to be turned in before the hearing day. But Education Committee primarily deals with K through 12 education issues, and you can see a list of issues that they usually deal with, and they also work with childcare issues as well. And all of these are going to be the same, where the chair sets the hearing dates. The bills can be heard up to 3 times. They have to make their analysis available for us to look at 1 day before the hearing. And they also use a consent calendar in the Education Committee, meaning that if it's a bill they feel like won't have a lot of people opposing it, then they generally will put it on a consent calendar where they are assuming that no one has a problem with it and it's going to go right through. And it does take a majority vote to move the bill through the process. So one of the last ones here that we work with is the Human Services, because that's usually where bills that deal with like CDSS are going to be heard. And they also meet on the same days and times. So you can see I put this on this slide. And the reason that I put it on there is because it's going to be available later. So you can go back and look and remember to bookmark those pages. But you can see that they primarily deal with like child welfare services and foster care and child care and things like that. And again, it's the same for Human Services as it is for education. They can hear a bill up to 3 times, but no more than 3 times. The same thing with the analysis has to be made available for us to look at. So, pretty similar rules for each of the committees. Now, these budget committees is something that we're going to be discussing next week, but I didn't want to leave it out for you guys because it's such an important part of what we do. So we do advocating for policy bills, but also for budget bills, like when we talked about like the rate reform and how they wanted to include that in with the budget. There are also committees that deal with budget bills. So we have the Standing Budget Committee, which the Senate and the Assembly create their own budget plans of what they want for the budget for California. And then they have to work together to kind of work out all the kinks and agree. And then the governor also has to come together to discuss that so that it's a cohesive budget plan. And then we have subcommittees on top of that. So you have the Assembly subcommittee that deals with health and human services budget issues and education finance. So there's a lot of subcommittees, but I don't want to go too far into that right now because we're going to be talking about that next week. So I don't want to put too much on your plate. So now I'm going to switch over to Juliet and let her talk to you about bill analysis.
Thanks, Justina. I'm going to take a quick pause and see if anybody has any questions because she just gave us a lot of information in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So feel free to like unmute yourself or raise a hand or pop anything in the chat if you guys do have questions bubbling up. And then also I love that new Capitol Hill Bill on the Hill song updated for 2021. Made me laugh. It's good to note though that video did tell us the federal process of how bills go through the federal legislature, which is not identical to California, and is I would say a little more fraught and contentious of a process than what we go through here in California, since California does enjoy a super majority of Democrats and things of that nature. But love that video. Brings me back to my elementary school days. So since I'm seeing no questions, I'm going to go ahead and dive into bill analyses. So bill analyses are really important documents. I know for myself as a student of public policy at Sacramento State, these are things I would rely upon when looking for information about specific issues, because they're really comprehensive about the current state of things and where things are going within the legislature. So a bill analysis has to be prepared before any bill is heard in committee. And as Justina mentioned, they are prepared by committee staff. And the relationships that we advocates build with committee staff is really important, because while those committee staff are preparing the analyses, it's our job to talk to the committee staff and answer any questions they have about the bills, clarify the intent of the bills, listen to their feedback about any amendments that we might need to take. So that relationship with the committee staff who are in charge of these bills, bill analyses, is really important. The few things that are included as subject headlines in every bill analysis is going to be current law. And Justina is going to pull up an example for me pretty soon. I believe when you go back into our files here, you can pull up the specific files for our rate reform bills that CCRC and our coalition partners like Every Child California got to work on last year. As well as, you can see a lot of information on there. I think we can just go ahead into the next slide, Justina, so I can walk them through what's a part of the documents. Okay. So there is a lot of information on these documents, and Justina went ahead and broke every kind of element down on the slides for us to look at. So this, the first thing you're going to see on a bill analysis is where the bill is located currently. If it's in the Assembly or the Senate, you'll see the bill number as well as the author and the date and location of the bill hearing. At the top, you're going to see the very nice little summary of what the bill is about. And go to the next slide. Okay, then the analysis goes a bit deeper. It's trying to give our legislative members a full picture of an issue, a full picture of our policy without them having to go and do any research themselves. They might have no clue what rate reform is, but hopefully a bill analysis will help them get there. So first, the bill analysis is going to explain what existing laws touch the topic of the proposed policy that we're bringing into this committee interacts with. So for example, the AB 596 on rate reform, there are other existing laws within Welfare Institution Code or WIC code that touched the features of that bill. So it's really important to know what is out there already. Then it's going to tell you if there's any fiscal impact. A lot of the time, you'll see a fiscal effect saying unknown, because those things are kind of still in the process, and especially if the bill hasn't gotten to any budget committees yet or any appropriations committees, and it wouldn't because these policy matter committees come before appropriations, the effect might be unknown. And then after that, you're going to see comments, a comment section on why the bill would be a good solution to the identified issue. This can be quite a long section because it's the main justification that a lot of legislators are going to be paying close attention to on why they should be for or against this bill. After that, there are sections within the bill analysis that the committee staff put together. And like I said before, this is a really important part of building relationships with committee staff, because before these bill analyses are released, myself as an advocate, I have the job of calling up Susie, who's the chief consultant for Senate Education, and asking her if she has any questions or feedback about the viability of the bill, the feasibility on different levels, whether it be fiscal, political, or clashing against existing legislation. From those conversations, it's usually clear what's going to be in the bill analysis, so it's no surprise to us advocates. But even then, some last-minute recommendations might come through from committee staff. Those recommendations are going to be listed here under recommended committee amendments. and it's usually the job of the committee to accept or deny those amendments. And lastly, the bill analysis will identify any existing legislation out there that was passed or failed, whether or not they've made it through the end of the process or not. It's going to talk about attempts in legislation that were related to this issue in the past. And then lastly, we have that very key list of registered supporters and registered folks organizations in opposition to the bill. Like Justina mentioned with Senator Cortese, this is something that the legislators probably go to first. It's important to pay attention of, for us advocates, who's in support and who's in opposition, because if we know that maybe the teachers union is opposing a bill, we're going to know that we're facing pretty big opposition and there's a lot to work on. Or if we get support from a really influential labor organization or our partner organization, that boosts our chances of getting this through committee with all aye votes. Go to the next slide. So those are the bill analysis documents. Usually those analyses are compiled into a file for people to look at during the day of the hearing. So all the information on all the bills is in this big packet. You can look at it digitally or physically. They're printed outside of committee hearing rooms on the day of the hearing. So during hearings, the author will present the bill to the committee, and testimony is heard either in support or opposition by both phone and in person. After testimony is heard and questions are asked from the committee members to either the author or the folks that they have coming in and testifying on the bill, and any clarifying questions are answered, the committee will vote to either pass the bill out of the committee, propose additional amendments, or recommend that the author amendments be adopted. Sometimes authors want to make last-minute amendments after a bill analysis was made and right before a committee hearing, and they will present those proposed amendments to the committee during the first hearing. So they'll either recommend that those are adopted or not. And then based on a majority vote, any of those situations I just said can happen. And an analysis, like I said, would be prepared before those hearings. So there are second and third readings of bills if they have any amendments happening to them during the first hearing. Sometimes it's miracle of miracles. Nobody has any problems with a very simple bill. First hearing, it goes through to the next committee. We're great. That is usually not the case. There's always somebody with different interests, different perspectives. Did you know about this fiscal impact? Did you consider this other law that might impact this? So we go to the third and second hearings. And again, a bill analysis should be provided before those hearings. Basically the same cycle as the first time. It's presented by the author. They bring people in to testify. They hear public support or opposition. And then the roll call vote happens and the majority wins for either passing or not passing the bill out of that committee. Sometimes bills do not make it out of those committees and they can be placed in what's called the suspense file until the author makes changes to the bill that the committee agrees with or finds acceptable. If the committee and the author cannot agree on what to do with amendments to the bill, then they can let it die. A bill can very much get stuck in the first or second round of hearings during their first committee, and it just gets stuck there and it stays. So what happens to dead bills? We don't like to talk about this, but we have to. So when a bill dies during the first year of our 2-year legislative cycles, what happens is they often will get gutted and amended. So gutting means that pretty much all the content of the bill can be taken out and started fresh, but we're still keeping our bill number that was assigned at the start of the cycle, and we can even keep the same title of the bill. After that, it goes through the cycle again through committee, gets reviewed, voted on, goes to the assembly floor or the Senate floor for votes, switches to the other house, same process. However, if we're in the second year of the 2-year cycle, like we're going into for 2024, and a bill dies, it's gone. It can't be brought back with the same bill number. So let's say AB 596, it was put on a 2-year track at the end of this year because we made a lot of wins via the budget that we didn't need the policy vehicle for anymore. So the author's holding the bill as a 2-year bill, and she'll bring it back, gutted and amended with a new purpose. And if it dies at the end of 2024, it's gone. But the ideas don't die, our passion won't die. Our authors are still our champions. We can try again. It's just going to get a new bill number. The next slide. Okay, so this is my favorite part of my first year on working with legislation and advocating for ECE issues this year, testifying. It sounds really scary, but it's not. We have to keep in mind that when we go into this big white building, that it's our building, it's the public's house, our voices are there to be heard. So please don't be intimidated when it's your turn to testify, because your voices really, really matter. So when the bill hearings happen, there is a testimony. Usually authors with the authors of the bill contact advocates or constituents, community members, whoever has stakes in the bill and interest working with the bill, to come in and do usually a 2 to 3 minute speech testifying for the bill. And when you testify, you can be asked questions from the committee. So you should be prepared for any Q&A. When you come up to testify, there's a few simple things that you're going to do. At the hearing, you're going to state your name and then the organization that you represent. If you are a member, if the member is, if one of the members is your representative, do let them know. So if you're a constituent, that's very important to know. What legislators want to hear when you're testifying. Yes, they want to hear about the important policy bits a bit, but they want to hear about your story. They want to hear about why you, as a childcare provider, as a director of a center, why this bill would impact you, why would it help the field, why it's important. They want to hear your personal stories. I have seen a lot of legislators get tearful at personal stories, and it really helps push votes forward when you make it personal. Then after you tell your story, and if you're testifying at the fiscal committees, like Justina mentioned, you're gonna keep your testimony speech to just about the fiscal impacts, because the policy committees, they're there to hear about policy. They're here to look at the reasoning and rationale and the effects. Fiscal committees, they want to hear about the money mostly. So that's testifying. You can also do this over the phone if you can't come in person. That's perfectly fine. And you would do pretty much the same thing. There's a number that you call in, the operator puts you in queue, they tell you when to speak, and usually you can hear the committee chair ask you to start speaking when it's your turn to do so. It's important that we track the bills and testify at every hearing if we're working on advocating for a specific bill. The legislators and committee staff also pay close attention to how full the room is with support or opposition, and how many phone calls they get for testimony. It's basically like hearing the live votes from the public on how much they care about this issue. And it is important to know, when you do call in just for either offering support or opposition to a bill, you have to keep it really short, because there's usually a lot of people on the phone lines. I've been on hold for over an hour just to say, hi, yes, Juliet Terry with CCRC. I support this bill. So it's a long wait, short delivery, but it's really helpful. So this is what I was kind of approaching before. There is a difference between a testimony or testifying and a Me Too. Testifying, like I said, you're going to get an invitation from the author's office to come and help them volley this bill in their committee. You're going to work with the author's office, usually their legislative director or the staff members that you're working with closely on the bill, to prepare your talking points and make sure that, you know, we're on the same page. I'm hitting the same things that you need me to highlight that the author's not going to quite get to, and those things. You're going to have 2 to 3 minutes to do this. And the members and the chairs are very respectful of your time. They usually don't cut you off. They will cut you off if you're taking more time than other people are taking. That's usually when they get kind of sharp with it. Like I said, be prepared for Q&A. And after the legislator prevents the bill, that's when you get to come forward and do your testimony. Me Too's are different. You don't need to be invited to do them. This is like, I might have a personal opinion about a bill in a different committee. Like say I'm really into housing and I just want to call in and give my 2 cents. I can do that. I can come in or call in, and there's a section after all bills are usually discussed. Not all bills, the bill is usually discussed, that they'll call in for Me Too's. And it's very simple. Again, name, organization you're affiliated with, and whether or not you support or oppose the bill. And if you go too far into your speech, they will cut your mic off. Seen it happen a lot. Okay, so committee hearings are one major piece of the advocacy puzzle. But I'd say what's more important to testifying and making sure you have the right talking points in a committee is visiting the legislators. Yes, the education committee does cover state preschool. So when you are preparing to do advocacy for any bill or cause, you've got to go connect with your legislator. It's very important that you let the legislative office know that you're a constituent, because constituent voice really matters. And you want to target visits to legislators that sit on the committees that you know your bill is going to be running through. So every legislator's office has all the information that they could possibly need on the topic before the committee hearings even start. So hopefully those members are educated enough to know what's going on with your issue, so they aren't dumbfounded when they hear the term hold harmless in committee, as I've seen happen. When you do your legislative visits, you have to schedule a meeting in advance. And I say have to as in they want to know who's coming into their offices, when and why. All those things get tracked within legislative offices for the members. It is not unusual for you to ask for an appointment with the legislator themselves, the senator or assembly member, and you're gonna get a staff member. Instead, don't feel slighted by this. I think in my last year of advocacy, out of all of the meetings I've had with legislator offices, I've met maybe 5 members out of maybe over 100 visits I've done. Members are very busy. They're usually booked to be in 3 places at once. You're gonna be talking to staff members who are also really, really busy and have the attention span of a bee. So it's really important to be prepared when you go into these visits with all of the information that you want to present to them and be concise and to the point. And also bring all materials that have background information that you don't want to spend time going over verbally with them. It's really important also, if you're representing a specific group, to let the office know that you're representing Every Child California or ECE Voices Network, because the more people that they get through their door of a specific organization, they know that there's a lot of force behind this bill. We can go to the next slide. So yes, doing your homework, being prepared, super important. Try to keep your talking points down to like 5 minutes. You're going to want to leave room for questions and answers from the staff member or the legislator, if you're lucky, about the topic. As I said before, bring in your education materials. It could be something that you use during the meeting to like show as a visual, because I know you guys are teachers and visual learning is really helpful. We like graphs, we like things that engage people. Those are really useful to bring in. Also, if it's a complicated topic, I know a lot of new staff members have no clue about how rate structures are formed for childcare reimbursement rates. Bringing in an explainer sheet for them to look at, or sending it to them before the meeting starts, either over email or dropping it by their offices, is super helpful as well. And I think one of the big things I learned as an advocate in the last year is to give space for the legislator or the staff member to express the views of the legislator in the office. I think a lot of times we go in, we're really excited, guns blazing, I got all this great information, I need to talk to you about it. Did you know that this is what's happening? It's so important, XYZ. And then you'll pause and then you'll realize, oh, maybe they already knew about this. Maybe they have a kid in childcare. Maybe they're struggling with some things around childcare that I don't know about yet, but it'd be great to talk to them about. So it's really good to kind of let them lead the conversation at first. Ask them, what's your knowledge base on this issue? How important is it to the member? Things of that nature. So leaving that nice conversational space there to build a relationship with them and not just throw information at them, because these staff members are having 50+ people a day come at them with pieces of paper and information, and their minds are numb. If you can make it personal and talk to them as people, super helpful. Lastly, when you're done with your visits, do follow up. And I should mention too about doing your homework and being prepared. It's okay to not know the answer to a question. That doesn't make you look bad as an advocate. When you say, I'm not sure, but I'll get back to you, that's a really good entry point for follow-up. So always leave room for questions, always be fine with saying, I don't know, but I'll come back with more information. You're going to want to send them follow-up emails or phone calls after your meeting to check in on deliverables you might have talked about with them, trying to secure a vote in committee, trying to make sure that the member understands what's going on. If there's things going on within their district that connect to the issue, following up with that. These are all great things to do, or just a simple thank you note. Thank you so much for your time. You know, like I said, these members and their staff members are super busy and it can be sort of a thankless job. So just being kind always goes a really far way. And I think at this point, I can stop rambling and hand it over to Ken. And I'm just going to check the chat for any questions before. So, okay. Yeah, Ken, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juliet. That was very informational. I learned a lot right there, and it's great to hear from somebody that's a pro actually doing the advocacy and what it's like. And Justina, you did a fantastic job putting all this together, and obviously you've learned a lot because you've taught me a lot. So as everybody knows, we typically have elections every couple years in California. You know, on even years. So we had one last year, 2022. And so the following year is considered the first year of a 2-year legislative period or session. So there's opportunity for legislation to be started and go through the process. And if it's not able to get approved and sent on to the other house, you have the Assembly and the Senate, you are able to suspend it or whatever the appropriate term is. And as Juliet said, you can come back and the author can amend it, make some changes to it. Sometimes they're gutted and amended. I don't know why they use the same bill number. So I maybe Juliet can explain that, but they do. And so sometimes the bill that we as the field support in 2023, when it comes around to 2024, it's, you know, animal control or something. It has nothing to do with us. So I don't know why that's the rule, but that is the rule. Next slide. So yeah, once the legislature is definitely very much in our corner, I would say, particularly since it's a democratically dominated legislature. They're very much behind what we do as a field. So we have that. Our biggest obstacles to things, of course, is money. That's everybody's obstacle. It's a Department of Finance who, you know, kind of controls the purse strings, and the governor who they work for. So the Department of Finance is under his control or her control. And so really getting to the governor is the next step. And that's usually the big lift, because even Democratic governors, you know, there's so many needs in this great state, this huge and great state. And we just see one piece of it, and they see all of it, as do the legislators. So, it's a lot tougher to get, the governor usually on board with things. As we saw this last year, thankfully the Women's Caucus and many others in the legislature pushed really, really hard and basically made, rate reform for our field as their number one priority of all their priorities. I mean, of all the things that they get asked for in the state, and as much as childcare and early education is important to them, this last year they made our field the number one thing for both houses, the Senate and the Assembly. It's the first year that ever happened where they both were behind it. And you saw, that's why, the Women's Caucus was asking for $1 billion. Super COLA, as you may recall, ended up going, in with the CPU union legislature or negotiations regarding the fetchins. That's how we got some rate reform. I don't really care how it happened. Thankfully, it's happening. So the governor did sign off on that. He basically, punted to the union to negotiate, and I think the legislators allowed that to kind of happen for us to get what we got, to get the beginnings of rate reform. So it's super important to hit the governor up. He does have a portal that you can send letters to. Last spring was a big time. We had a lot of rallies at the Capitol there, and that's a fun thing to do and gets a lot of attention, particularly last year with the CCPU union. They had probably 5,000 people, 3,000 or 4,000 people out there, and a lot of us with ECE Voices and Every Child California were part of that. Next slide. So once a piece of legislation gets to passes both houses, it goes to the governor. He can sign it to law. He can veto it. He can let it become a law without signature. He usually does explain if he does veto something, and they can override the veto with a 2/3 majority in both the Senate and the Assembly. Next slide. So this is a great page for us to go to look at bills. And one thing I do want to stress, that there's been a lot of information here, huge amount. There will be a test next meeting. No, just kidding. But the big takeaway, I think, is that we will be prompted by Every Child California, by ECE Voices, when there are things going on, when there are bills, and there's a number of bills that Every Child California has, helped sponsor, co-sponsored, or, supported. And Every Child California, we put out the legislative grid every few weeks, comes out, tells you what the status of various bills are that are pertaining to our field. But you will be prompted, you will know through emails or meetings that you attend, you'll know what's going on. You'll hear about these bills that are working their ways. And if you do have a certain thing, something of great importance to you that you want a bill, I would suggest maybe contacting, Justina, or if you're a member of Every Child California, hopefully you are, because it's a fantastic organization and great resources. I can't stress that enough, particularly for new contractors and contractors. So much information, but the Every Child California will kind of direct you, and I would suggest you speak to them, to the organization, before you try to do a bill, because there may be something working already, or there may be information amongst, basically Every Child California is just a group of just hundreds and thousands of us all, with this kind of the same heart, the same goal, and we share a lot. And so you could get some information to kind of find out what happened 3 years ago. Somebody tried that same bill and this is what happened, or how to go about it. So I would suggest before you try to get a bill, originated through an author, you might consider talking to Every Child California, just to find out if, something like that is already working somewhere else, or if it's gone through or not. But this is a really great portal right here. And you'll see at the bottom, the HTTPS, the legislature.ca.gov. That's where this is. And you can go in and click, and you can see what the bill number is and have it search. And you can find out what the status of the bill is. And also you'll see it has the schedule on the left-hand side, the floor schedule, committee hearings, and that sort of thing. So this is a really great place to start. Can we get the next slide? And so these are different things that you can find out about on the bill. If you go to that web page, you can find out what the status is. You can get the history. You can see the written bill. You can see the support behind it. And then you can see what's as it says here, in committee, held under submission, etc. Those types of things. So it's really, really great information. Next slide. And then this is the information for the assembly. I do. There is a letter portal for the legislation, and the address that I have is callegislation.lc.ca.gov. But you can set up an account there. You have to set up an account, and then you can submit letters of support or objection through that portal. Yes, there you go, right there. Perfect. Yeah. So there's a tremendous amount of information available to find out the bills. Every Child California puts out, the week or every few weeks, the bill analyses or status. We have all these, the ECE Voices meetings that are starting to happen and will continue, the training, etc. There's lots of opportunity to learn and to have your voice heard. And I just want to reiterate, the legislators they really want to hear from the providers in particular. They really want to know what is happening. They hear from different people, but they want to hear from the people actually, in that position. They're very kind. They're very, they give you as much time as they can. They have very busy schedules and whatnot. Most of the time if you are going to meet with, somebody in their office, you're not going to meet with the legislator themselves, but they definitely listen to what we have to say. They definitely care. I mean, money is always a big issue, and it's the biggest, obstacle usually, but they're very much in our corner, particularly this field. I think nobody has an issue with our field. You might if you were, a gun lobby or something like that, or energy or something, but everybody loves this field. They know that we're underpaid and appreciated. And it's actually nice to go there because they really want to see you. It's not like you're bothering them. They really do want you to go there, and they really do want to help us. I was really impressed when I got to meet with Assemblymember Arambula, who is my assembly member. He actually came out and got me from the reception area, basically led all the lobbyists, made them, wait and go somewhere else. He came out personally and took me back to his office and sat there as if he had nothing else but to listen to me. And it really made me feel important, because a lot of times I don't feel that important, particularly when I'm, calling in, or if you're going to the committee meetings and testifying, you realize that there's just thousands of people asking for money. That's basically what's happening at these meetings. So when you can actually go to your legislator and speak to them, and you're really, if you're really going to have the most level of support if you can get them on your side and get that personal connection. Are there any questions that any of us can answer?
I know it's getting kind of late, so I can help. Let's Juliet, do you want to check the chat? I think there might be something in there. And then what I'm going to do is just let you know that we do have a training coming up next week. It's also on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, same time. It is going to be through Zoom, and we're going to be doing Budget 101. So we're going to be going over what does the budget timeline look like in California? What are the budget committees and what do they do, along with the subcommittees, and how the budget hearings work, and the budget and the governor. Lots of terms and definitions. So we'll try to break down that into 2 separate trainings. So we're not going to cover a ton of information in that first one because there's a lot to cover, and the budget process is a little bit more nuanced than it actually is, a little bit more complicated than the bill policy cycles. So we hope you can join us on November 14th. And please feel free, if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions live, you can do that. I want to thank Juliet and Ken very much for your time tonight in helping present all of this information. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us and learn this information. I'm available to answer any additional questions either at Justina@everychildca.org or at advocacy@everychildca.org. We'll do a little recap of the position letter portal, and we also have another 5-week session coming up in January where we're going to be going over specific advocacy methods where we can do a deeper dive into that portal and how to write a support letter as well. But I see that there's a few things in the chat, so I'm going to check that before we close out here to make sure we're answering everyone's questions. Looks like we got it. And then we'll send a follow-up email to you guys after this and just give you a link to the resource page. I'm going to be putting documents out there that have to do with this training that you just attended, along with the slides and also the videos that you'll have access to. So thank you so much. And I hope you all have a really wonderful evening.
Bye, everyone.
And bye.